If you post online in some of the major Elder Scrolls circles, you've probably heard about this big Elder Scrolls 6 leak that is getting a ton of coverage right now. And some seemingly reputable insiders are covering this one, leading many to believe it could be legit. I've even had a ton of you reaching out to me to cover this one. And this leak does make some pretty major predictions, such as the fact that we should be seeing the Elder Scrolls 6 this year. Initially, I completely wrote this leak off. I thought it was just nonsense, but then I saw quite a few people talking about it, and this is right around the time frame where we tend to get some legit leaks about these upcoming games. This was right around the time when the same thing happened with Starfield. Although sadly, when it comes to this Elder Scrolls 6 leak, it is almost certainly fake and you're being misled. A lot of the people covering this leak right now didn't bother to do the 5 minutes of extra research, so what you're mostly seeing online is insider Ecstasis being credited as the source of this leak. And that immediately comes with some credibility. Ecstasis is a rated tier 2 leaker on the Gaming Leaks forum. This is somebody who correctly predicted the date of the 2025 Developer Direct from Xbox, and was even the source, at least kind of, for some of those recent Oblivion remake leaks that were dominating headlines just a couple of months ago. But just like what happened with those past Oblivion leaks, it turns out that Ecstasis was really just reposting or really re-reporting what other supposed insiders already said, occasionally adding a few details himself. So with those Oblivion leaks, the actual rumors were posted first by Nate Drake on Reset Era. Nate Drake having a really good track record for leaks, and then a few days later, Ecstasis did have a video with some very similar information and a couple of details added. And this time around, while Ecstasis did talk about this new Elder Scrolls leak, he isn't the source or even claiming to be, because Ecstasis describes how he learned about this one from Colt Eastwood, a popular Xbox YouTuber. So just make a mental note, if you're consuming content from somebody who said Ecstasis is the source of this leak, that means that person didn't even bother to check what Ecstasis said themselves. And in reality, a few days ago, Colt Eastwood made a great video covering this leak, tying in some other quotes from Todd Howard to add context on what was being said, but there was one critical piece of information missing from the video itself, and that being the source of this leak, which was a random 4chan post that was made in November. This 4chan post was clearly linked in the description, but there was no mention of 4chan in the video itself. And yeah, that's really the whole thing. A YouTuber covered a 4-month-old 4chan leak on the Elder Scrolls 6, another insider talked about what that YouTuber talked about in a video, and now a bunch of other people or media outlets are further perpetuating this rumor. And what to me is genuinely the funniest part about all of this is the current Gaming Leaks and Rumor Reddit post about this has over 1,000 upvotes. This clearly attributing Ecstasis as the source of this recent rumor, so it gives it a bit more credibility. But in the process of doing research for this video, I found that that exact same 4chan post was posted on this subreddit right around when it was posted on 4chan, and the post just was downvoted and mocked as being ridiculous and unbelievable. It took me like 3 minutes of effort to realize that the source of this leak was a 4chan post. And diving into the leak itself, it's honestly pretty rough. This post was made on November 19th, 2024, and literally starts off by saying that you should take the post with a grain of salt. Definitely not a great first sign, but the post continues on. Everything is still early and very early in development, and up in the air and could change by release. Bethesda deliberately aren't using any design documents for this title while developing it, could change in the future. And like, yeah, okay, we're only one sentence in, but I already think there are several red flags going up around this one. To me, this sounds super fake, because even from the onset, the Elder Scrolls 6 almost certainly isn't very early into development. Starfield dropped about a year and a half ago now, and even at the end of Starfield's development, it was really described as a large-scale bug-fixing phase rather than active development on features. All the way back in August of 2023, we heard from Pete Hines how the Elder Scrolls 6 was not in a conceptual phase anymore, but instead, in August of 2023, the Elder Scrolls 6 was in early development. So now we have a post from November of 2024, a year and some change later, that's saying it's still in very early development. Yeah, Bethesda games take a while, but a year plus of progress does seem like enough to get out of that early development phase. The game being designed with no design documents also just kind of sounds ridiculous. Like, yeah, for a smaller team that's a bit more dedicated and experienced, you could see how that could work, but on a large-scale project like the Elder Scrolls 6, which will probably have 500 to 1,000 developers working on it, yeah, there's almost certainly some design documents out there. Reportedly, Todd Howard is directing this game with Anand returning for the soundtrack. The code name for the Elder Scrolls 6 is Highfell, and it's being developed for both Xbox and PC only. Reportedly, there are talks of it coming to PS5, but that would only be years after release, and all of that just kind of makes sense. It's not really a leak, but more of a safe prediction. Highfell just being a reference to the location of the Elder Scrolls 6. the overarching speculation in the community right now is that this game's going to be taking place in Hammerfell and High Rock. But this leaker continues on, saying that the Elder Scrolls 6 is currently in pre-alpha, with members of the Starfield team moving over to help, or I guess they would be moving over to help in November. And in the process of development, the creation engine was overhauled yet again, and a strong crunch culture is currently being employed at Bethesda to get this game out. And as I'm sure many of you are picking up on, I would just kind of say all of that doesn't make much sense. If the game's in pre-alpha, still super early into development, why are they crunching? Bethesda is not known for having a major crunch problem, and even though yes, there have been reports of some crunching to get games out in the past, The Elder Scrolls 6 is still years away even by the most optimistic predictions. Why on earth would they be crunching now? And even the engine being overhauled the second time would just be kind of odd. In his most recent Wired interview from late 2023, Todd Howard almost described how The Elder Scrolls 6 will be on a similar tech level to Starfield, just like Fallout 3 was to Skyrim.
Coming into Morrowind, and then we build off that. These share a very similar technology base, in the same way these share a technology base, and now this does. If we meet again, there'll be an Elder Scrolls 6 here.
This leaker does follow up a bit later on to claim that it's specifically crunched from former Starfield team members who are upgrading the engine, but personally, I just don't buy any of that. I'm kind of throw out this leak on those crunch claims alone. So at this point, if I haven't made it clear, yeah, I don't take this leak seriously at all. I think it's completely fake, but now we do get into the most fun part with some of the gameplay details that were shared, as the leaker does report that the Elder Scrolls 6 will feature 2 provinces for the first time in an Elder Scrolls game, which is this title's gimmick, as the people in the team call it. Matt looks like the image in this post, more or less, this being the image in question. And yeah, that's just kind of safe speculation right now. Most people think the Elder Scrolls 6 teaser is alluding to a High Rock and Hammerfell based game, so this leaker predicting that just, yeah, it makes sense. That's what everyone's predicting right now. But the title's second gimmick is the focus on seafaring/pirate gameplay and procedural generation content with a shipbuilder and procedurally generated islands and dungeons when using the ships at sea. But honestly, this too is a fairly common point of speculation with the Elder Scrolls 6. It's something I personally suspect. Bethesda made all of these investments into getting vehicles working on Creation Engine and making this beautiful shipbuilder that just feels like it should go somewhere. I feel like this thing shouldn't live and die with Starfield alone. Hopefully some of the new tech design for Starfield will carry over to other games, and being able to make your own ships does seem like an obvious way to bring it to the Elder Scrolls. Back in 2020, this fandom leak was posted supposedly sharing details on the Elder Scrolls 6. It ended up getting quite a bit of attention, but the leaker came back to say that the post was fake and even apologized to everyone. But behind the scenes, something else was going on. Me and a few others reached out to this person who did share some evidence of correctly leaking things in the past on Reddit, and even further did show a supposed NDA that they had signed with Bethesda. And I'm not exactly an expert on what NDAs should or shouldn't look like, but it passed the sniff test, at least a rough one. It wasn't immediately debunkable based on the NDA paperwork. So even though this person did literally say this leak is fake, I've always just kind of kept my eye on it. And it too talks about boats being in the Elder Scrolls 6, saying Bethesda intends to build off vehicle mechanics developed for Starfield to allow players to traverse the Iliac Bay in ships. The current plan is there will be several different ships to buy and some very light customization for them. They'll range from a rowboat to a big for-sale pirate ship. They can all be crewed by NPCs in the same way that the player can assign NPCs to different jobs at settlements in Fallout 4. By the way, speaking of mechanics, spellcrafting is back. Don't know much about it. And one of the other things that always stuck with me from this fandom leak is the fact that it got the release dates for both games right, at least kind of. This fandom post was made in 2020, but it claims that Starfield was coming in 2021 and the Elder Scrolls 6 dropping in 2024. We saw a ton of people make that same prediction of Starfield as a 2021 game, and they were eventually outed as being fake insiders, because of course, Starfield isn't a 2021 game. But it turns out they were right, at least kind of. Per this leaked Bethesda roadmap, which was made in 2020, technically just a couple of months after this fandom leak was posted, and this leaked roadmap shows Starfield as a 2021 game, with the Elder Scrolls 6 as a 2024 game. But of course, shortly after this was made, Bethesda ended up getting bought out by Microsoft, and the pandemic was raging for a couple of more years, so that led to many of the delays we're seeing now, but this post technically did get those internal release dates correct. But looking back at this definitely real 4chan leak, it's not just boats and potential boat customization that are coming. The settlement system from Fallout 4 will return, allowing you to run your own village or settlement as a lordly ruler type. This 4chan post was made right around when the Elder Scrolls Castles dropped, which does literally have you ruling a kingdom with your own subjects that you can control, and I fully suspect this is where they got the inspiration for this lordly ruler type. They're just kind of ripping off what they're already doing in castles and assuming they're going to add it to the Elder Scrolls 6. Personally, I would enjoy being able to rule your own village or settlement. I think that'd be really cool. I'm somebody who put way too many hours into real-time settler back in the day, and I've always wanted Bethesda to expand on a more management or civilization ruling mechanic in some of their games. I feel like when you take it to a town or city level, it actually can work surprisingly well in Fallout or the Elder Scrolls. But according to this leaker, Bethesda won't be making the same mistakes as with Fallout 4 settlements because the Elder Scrolls 6 will supposedly feature 13 cities. Cities plan on being large, but so far they're mostly all Solitude Whiterun size as of now, and don't have loading screens to enter, plan to have around 12 to 13 cities. To which this leaker follows up by saying, Bethesda is trying to address how to reduce as many loading screens in the game after Starfield complaints, which would kind of surprise me. One of the major areas for improvement when it comes to both Fallout 4 and Skyrim isn't load screens. Those aren't major issues with those games like they are with Starfield. And literally in the line before saying Bethesda wants less load screens, he says that Bethesda removed load screens from major cities. So to me, this just sounds like nonsense. Less load screens where? When entering individual interior cells? I don't think many people have too much of an issue with loading as you do this, particularly with how fast many of the load times are on modern hardware, and progression is more simplified in the Elder Scrolls 6, with Bethesda wanting less numbers and menus, more gameplay in leveling. There are no classes or signs anymore, you acquire perks through reading books. Learning spellbooks have a mini-game tied to them based on magic skill. You get stronger through gameplay, health increases if you survive damage, stamina if you sprint a lot, magicka if you use magic a lot, etc. Honestly, a lot of that classless system is already here with Skyrim, and the rest of it's pretty similar to how things work in Starfield with challenges for perks. So you have to actually do something or kind of use that perk in order to get to the next level and upgrade it. The author did have some follow-up posts on this overall thread, and even did share some of the supposed story beats. You can pause here if you want to read this one, I'm not diving into this. And also said that dragons would be returning, before they eventually stopped replying as 4chan was being rude. In some of the leak recap posts, you can see mentioned that the Elder Scrolls 6 would also be shown in July of 2025, but the source of that does seem to be solely Xtasis, as opposed to this original 4chan post. So basically Xtasis is adding in a few details of his own, which could or could not be legit. Because yeah, that July 2025 showcase date is kind of a common guess. Not July, really it would be June for the summer showcase. I think July just might be a typo or someone misspeaking. But I think there is a fairly decent chance we could see the Elder Scrolls 6 at the summer showcase this year, largely just because of Game Pass. If you want people to stay subscribed to Game Pass, that requires you to show them that, yeah, there's a bunch of cool content on the horizon. If the Elder Scrolls 6 really is a 2026 game, like that lawyer said during the FTC trial, then it wouldn't be that crazy for it to get a trailer a year in advance. Of course, Bethesda hated doing that in the past, but Bethesda is owned by Microsoft now. A lot is different. And overall, I would just say this leak is completely fake. A lot of the game predictions are fairly safe bets, so it's kind of fun to run through it and speculate a bit on how some of these features could be implemented. A lot of the features that are described in this one are just things many members of the community do expect from this game. But when it comes to some of the other details shared, I feel like a lot of that just wasn't super believable to me. It feels like a lot of these leaks always hit on the same exact topics: procedural generation, the location of Hammerfell and High Rock, boats being added to the game, and these things pop up over and over because they're just common community speculation. A real leak would likely contain way more in the way of novel details, things that Bethesda's experimenting with or taking in a different direction that we just don't know about yet.